It was a cold, wet Tuesday evening in Seattle. The kind of night where the sky stayed dark, and the rain tapped softly on the windows like it had something to say. Ryan Collins, 35, had just returned from another exhausting day at the architecture firm where the deadlines never slept. His condo sat on the 14th floor overlooking the city, but lately even the view felt dull. The lights, the sound of life below, didn't touch him anymore. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, kicked off his boots, and let the weight of the day settle into his tired shoulders. He hadn't spoken to anyone beyond small talk in weeks. The silence wasn't uncomfortable to him anymore, had become his only real company since Claire left. 2 years had passed, but the memories still lived in every corner of that apartment. The way she used to hum in the kitchen, how she'd curl up on that worn-out leather couch, the scent of her vanilla shampoo that never quite faded from his pillowcases. She had vanished from his life like smoke, and even though he'd survived, a part of him had stopped breathing the day she walked out. The jazz was playing low in the background when it happened. The door creaked open slowly, like in a dream or a nightmare. He turned around, expecting a mistake. But it wasn't. She stepped into the room like a ghost from a life he barely dared to remember. She was dripping wet, water gliding down her, bare shoulders wrapped in nothing but a white towel that clung to her skin. Her hair was soaked, dark and heavy, stuck to her face and neck. She didn't say a single word, just stood there, breathing softly, staring at him like time had paused. Ryan froze. He thought maybe he'd lost his mind. His heart slammed against his ribs, and for a second, he forgot how to breathe. "Claire," he whispered. It was all he could manage. She didn't answer. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Her eyes were glassy, red around the edges, like she hadn't slept or stopped crying for days. She wrapped her arms around herself, not in a seductive way, but like she was holding herself together, and still she said nothing. She just looked at him, and the silence between them felt louder than the storm outside. Ryan stepped closer, slowly, cautiously, like approaching something wild and wounded. He could smell her fresh rain, lavender, and something raw, something sad. He wanted to ask her 1,000 questions. Where have you been? Why now? Why like this? But none of them made it to his lips. Instead, he pulled off his hoodie and handed it to her. She took it gently, brushing his fingers as she did, and slipped it over her head. Her towel fell to the floor like an afterthought. They stood there for a long moment, no touching, no speaking, just feeling. The space between them crackled with something electric, something unfinished. There was no shouting, no accusations, no apology. Only two broken people standing in the ruins of what used to be love. And in that silence, Ryan realized something he had never stopped waiting for her. Not really, even when she left. Even when he told himself he was over it. Deep down, some foolish part of him had always been hoping she'd walk through that door again, but not like this. Not wearing only a towel. And not without saying a word. Asterisk, the next morning, the rain had stopped. But the tension in the air hadn't. Claire sat at the small kitchen table wrapped in Ryan's sweatshirt, sipping from the same old navy blue mug she used to use, the one that still had a tiny chip on the rim. Ryan stood across from her, leaning against the counter, arms folded, watching her like she might disappear again if he blinked. Neither of them had slept much. The night before had been quiet, no fighting, no demanding answers, just her curling up on the couch and him lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was real. Now, in the soft morning light, she looked different, not just tired, but fragile. Her face held that familiar softness, the one that used to undo him without a word. And yet, she also looked like someone who had been carrying a weight far. "Too long? You still make tea the same way," she said suddenly, offering a small, tired smile. Her voice was raspy from sleep and tears. "Some things don't change," Ryan replied, his tone flat but gentle. But deep down, he knew too much. had changed. They weren't the same people they were 2 years ago. Claire wasn't the woman who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen while dinner burned. And Ryan wasn't the man who used to believe that love could fix anything. Still, her presence filled the space in a way that felt oddly familiar. It's like slipping into an old shirt you thought you'd thrown away. They sat there in silence for a while, letting the clock tick between them. Claire's fingers wrapped around the mug like she needed something to hold on to. Ryan could feel the questions piling up in his chest, but he didn't know how to ask them without breaking the fragile calm. Why had she come back? Why like this? Was she in trouble? Was she just lonely? But instead of digging into the pain, they talked about small things. The weather. The neighbor's new dog. How she'd missed the smell of fresh coffee in the morning. It was strange, awkward, but also warm. Like embers of a fire that had never fully gone out. Claire's eyes kept drifting around the condo, landing on old photos, pieces of the life they once built together, the books on the shelf, the plant she left behind that somehow survived. Her expression shifted between sadness and nostalgia. Like each memory was a reminder of something they lost. I shouldn't be here, she finally said, her voice trembling. I don't even know what I'm doing. But you are, Ryan said softly. It wasn't an invitation. It wasn't forgiveness. It was just the truth. She was there, and a part of him didn't want her to leave. That night, they stayed up. Late, curled on opposite ends of the couch, legs stretched toward each other, a soft blanket between them. They talked about the past, about how the silence between them had grown louder toward the end, about the nights they'd sleep facing, opposite directions, both hurting but too proud to say anything. Claire cried a little when she spoke about leaving. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I needed to figure out who I was without you, she said. But all I figured out was how much it hurt being without you. Ryan didn't say much. He didn't trust his voice. But inside, something was shifting. Because the truth was, he had never really stopped loving her. Not even on the day she walked away. And maybe, just maybe, she hadn't stopped loving him either. Asterisk over the next few days. Something strange and tender began to happen between Ryan and Claire, and neither of them had planned. But both of them quietly wanted. She stayed. At first it was just 4. The night, then 2, then a week. She started doing little things like making coffee in the morning the way he liked its texture cream. No sugar, and folding his laundry like she used to, tucking the corners of his shirts just right. She'd hum softly while stirring soup on the stove. And every once in a while, he'd catch her looking at him like she was trying to remember who they had been before it all fell apart. And he looked back at her the same way. There was a gentleness in their conversations now, an unspoken agreement to not rush, not force anything. They were like two people slowly rediscovering the rhythm of a dance they thought they'd forgotten. Nights became easier, too. They'd sit out on the small balcony together, wrapped in blankets, sipping wine under the city lights. Sometimes they'd talk. Sometimes they'd say nothing. But even the silence felt warm, like a soft place to land. Ryan noticed her laugh. Again, real laughter, not the polite kind she used with strangers. It hit him hard hearing it. He'd missed that sound more than he realized. One night, while watching an old movie, they used to love some corny romantic comedy they'd seen. A dozen times Claire leaned her head on his shoulder without asking. He didn't move. He just let her stay there. And for a long while, it felt like no time had passed at all. Later that night, something shifted between them. Not because they planned it, but because it felt right. Claire was in the kitchen drying dishes, barefoot, wearing one of his old t-shirts. Ryan came up behind her, gently wrapping his arms around her waist. She leaned into him without hesitation, and for the first time in years, it felt like home. She turned around slowly, her eyes meeting his, full of questions and quiet hope. He kissed her, soft and slow, like he was memorizing her all over again. There was no rush, no anger. Just years of emotion pouring out in one deep, aching moment. They ended up in his bedroom, tangled in sheets and each other. It wasn't wild or perfect, it was real. Honest, the kind of intimacy that comes when two people carry both love and pain in equal measure. And afterward, lying there in the quiet, dark, Claire rested her head on his chest and began to cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just soft, broken tears. "Why are you crying?" Ryan asked, brushing her damp hair away from her face. Her voice trembled as she answered, "Because I'm scared that I'm going to ruin this again, that we'll fall back into the same hurt." Ryan held her tighter. "We've already been through the worst," he whispered. "If we're going to try again, we do it slow. We do it honest." She nodded but didn't speak. Because even though they were lying side by side in the same bed again, there were still things between them, things unspoken. Wounds not fully healed and a secret Claire hadn't found the courage to tell him yet. But in that moment, wrapped in each other's arms, they both allowed themselves to believe that maybe love could still live here. Maybe it wasn't too late for them. Not yet. 3 weeks passed, and life inside Ryan's condo felt like something out of a dream neither of them wanted to wake up from. Mornings began with the smell of pancakes or eggs, the quiet rhythm of Claire's bare feet on the hardwood floors, and Ryan watching her from across the kitchen, wondering how something so broken could feel so right again. The way she smiled at him now, it wasn't like before. It was softer, more careful, like she was still learning how to be held without falling apart. They moved through each day like two people finding their way back to love. Not fast, not perfect, but real. She'd curl up on his lap in the evenings, his fingers playing lazily with her hair, both of them wrapped in the warmth of second chances. They had started sleeping together again, not just sex, but true intimacy. The kind that says, "I know what you've seen and I still want you." I was falling and he knew it. Maybe he never stopped. But what he didn't know, what Claire hadn't yet told him, was that there was something between them she had kept buried. A secret pulsing underneath all the laughter and quiet kisses. And it was only a matter of time before it came to the surface. One evening, Ryan came home early from work, rain soaking the collar of his jacket. The lights were off in the condo, and Claire wasn't in the living room. Her phone was sitting on the kitchen counter, screen lighting up with a message that caught his eye before he even realized what he was doing. He didn't mean to look, but curiosity and instinct pushed him. The message read, "He still doesn't know. You can't keep this from him. We need to talk." His stomach dropped. He picked up the phone, the lock screen sliding open without a passcode. A few texts later, it was all there: Claire was pregnant. And worse, the baby wasn't his. The texts didn't lie. She had been involved with someone else before she came back. A man named Mark from Portland. A man who knew about the pregnancy and clearly wasn't ready to step up. Ryan's hands were shaking. His chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. When Claire walked through the door 20 minutes later, soaked from the rain and smiling like nothing had changed, she stopped, cold when she saw the look on his face. The kind of look that said, "I know everything." He didn't yell. He didn't even raise his voice. He just held out her phone. "You lied to me," he said quietly, the pain thick in his throat. Claire froze, her face draining of color. "Ryan, I was going to tell you," she began, but he cut her off. After we bought groceries. After we made love again." The silence that followed was brutal. She nodded slowly, eyes filling with tears. "Yes, I lied. I was scared. I didn't come back to trap. We came back because I didn't know where else to go. And then I fell for you again. I knew the truth would ruin it." Ryan looked at her, the woman he had spent years loving, then losing, then loving again, and now he didn't know who she was anymore. "So was I just your safety net? A place to land when he didn't want the baby?" he asked, voice cracking. Claire stepped forward, crying now. "No, I came back because this is the only place that ever felt like home. I don't expect anything from you." I needed to be honest. Eventually. But for Ryan, the betrayal wasn't just about the light, was about the trust they'd started to rebuild. And in that moment, the dream shattered, leaving only truth, heartbreak, and the sound of rain falling outside. Asterisk, the days after Claire's secret came out were filled with heavy silence and long, painful pauses between words that used to come so easily. Ryan didn't kick her out, but he didn't hold her anymore either. They moved around the condo like strangers, careful not to touch, not to say too much. Like any wrong word would crack what little was left between them. The betrayal hurt not because she had a past, but because she kept it hidden behind soft kisses and a missed you eyes. Ryan couldn't stop thinking about it. The baby growing inside her. The man she didn't talk about. It's the fact that she let him fall again, knowing all along there was something standing between them. Claire tried to explain, but the words always came too late. "I didn't come here to dump this on you," she whispered one night, her voice shaking. "I came because I still loved you. And I didn't know what to do." Ryan wanted to. Believe her, God, he wanted to, because deep in his chest, the love hadn't died. It was still there, bruised, bleeding, but breathing. He'd see her asleep on the couch, one hand resting on her stomach, and part of him would ache with something he couldn't name. A mix of grief, desire, and something dangerously close to hope. One night, he stood in the doorway of their old bedroom watching her fold the baby blanket she bought with her own money. She was humming to herself like she was trying to build a new kind of peace from scratch. And something broke inside him. "Do you love him?" Ryan asked suddenly, his voice low. She turned, startled. "Mark," she said. He nodded. Claire hesitated. "No, not like I loved you. Not even close." Ryan stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "Then why did you sleep with him?" The question hung in the air like smoke. She swallowed hard. "'Cause I was lonely. 'Cause I thought we were over for good. And for a little while I needed someone to make the pain stop." She looked down, ashamed. "But I never meant for it to turn into this." Ryan sighed, his heart torn between anger and understanding. He reached for the wall to steady himself. "You could have told me the first night," he said. "When you showed up here wearing nothing but a towel. You could have said, 'Hey, Ryan, I'm pregnant with someone else's kid, but I don't know where else to go.'" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know I should have. But I didn't want you to look at me like you are now. And that hurt the most because she was right." He didn't know how to look at her anymore. She wasn't the same Claire who left. She wasn't even the Claire who walked through the door weeks ago. She was someone new now. Someone carrying a life and carrying shame and still holding on to love like it might save her. And Ryan, he was exhausted from fighting what he felt. Because no matter how hurt he was, he still saw the woman he used to call home. Still felt. His chest tightened every time she walked into a room. Still caught himself wondering what it would be like to raise that child. Not out of obligation, but out of love for her. He didn't say it out loud yet, but the thought was there, hiding in the back of his mind like a small, trembling flame. He knew there was one more question left to ask himself. Could he forgive her? Not forget, but forgive. And maybe start again, but answers like that don't come fast. They come in the quiet, in the slow, careful days after the storm. And Ryan wasn't sure yet, but he hadn't told her to leave. That had to mean something. 2 months later, fall had settled over the city like a warm golden blanket. The leaves outside Ryan's condo had turned shades of amber and rust, and the morning air had that quiet chill that made you want to hold someone close. Inside, everything had changed, but also, somehow, stayed the same. Claire was still there, her presence softer now, steadier. She had started going to prenatal appointments regularly, And sometimes, when Ryan had time, he'd go with her. He never said much at those visits, just held her hand and listened to the doctor talk about heartbeats and due dates. It wasn't easy. The pain hadn't just vanished. There were still nights Ryan would sit on the balcony alone, sipping whiskey, wondering if love was supposed to be this complicated. But then he'd hear Claire laughing at some silly commercial on TV, or he'd see the way her hands gently rested on her growing belly, and something inside him would soften. One night after dinner, they sat on the couch together. No TV, no background noise, just them and the sound of the wind outside. Claire looked tired but calm, her body glowing in a way that wasn't about makeup or clothes. It was something deeper. She turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I hurt you," she said, "and I won't ask you to forget it. But I still love you, Ryan. I don't know if that's enough, but it's the truth." He looked at her, really looked. At her, this woman who had broken his heart and walked back into his life, wearing only a towel and 1,000 regrets. And somehow, she was still the person he wanted to wake up next to. Maybe it wasn't the fairy tale. Maybe it never would be. But it was real, raw, and maybe that mattered more. Ryan reached out and took her hand, brushing his thumb across her fingers. "I've thought about this every day," he said, his voice low. "And yeah, I'm still hurt. I probably will be for a while. But I also know I don't want a life without you in it. I don't care about the past anymore. I just care about what we do next." Claire's eyes filled with tears, and she leaned into him like it was the only place that ever made sense. He kissed her not with urgency, but with certainty. Like this was where the story was always meant to lead. Later that week, they went to a small baby store on the corner of 7th and Maple. Nothing fancy. But they picked out a soft gray crib together, laughing over baby name books and arguing over car seat colors. For a moment, it felt like they were building something new, not fixing the past, but choosing each other all over again. And when the baby came 2 weeks early, on a quiet Tuesday morning, was there, holding Claire's hand through every contraction, whispering, "You're doing great," over and over until he believed it too. When the baby was born, a girl, healthy and pink-cheeked Claire cried, and Ryan did too. He held that tiny baby in his arms, her eyes blinking up at him like she'd been waiting to meet him all along. "She's not mine by blood," he said later, "but she's mine in every way that matters." Claire named her Hope, because that's what brought her back. That's what kept them together. And as they stood in the hospital room, exhausted and full of love, Ryan realized something. Sometimes love doesn't look like the movies. Sometimes it walks in wearing only a towel and gives you the rest of your life.